Our next topic relates to the accountability of public officials, specifically conflict between the Syracuse City School Board members and the media. The school board had its attorneys send a somewhat threatening letter to local Channel 3, WSTM, saying reporters were harassing board members by calling them. It was about a violent incident at a school where a teacher was beaten up. The board's policy is that only the president speaks for the board. I understand that policy. Luke, you've been a school board member. How do you see this?
I think it's a complicated situation for sure. I think reporters are doing their job by trying to get more information and informing the public. I also think being a school board member is a very time-consuming, largely thankless job where you are unpaid or minimally paid. So I think in this particular case, I think the school board needs to have good communication with the media. You want to have a productive relationship there. Sending a letter suggesting that there's been harassment is probably not going to be helpful to that relationship. And so that's not to say that harassment isn't real. I experienced it as a board member. It wasn't from the press. It was more from individual members coming up and community members yelling at you and saying all kinds of things, true and untrue, in a hostile way. So those kind of things happen. But I think in this case, the letter was not a good idea, and I think that it was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I will start by saying, going to the basics, right? The professional hazard of any public service is, surprise, surprise, facing the public. And especially if you are taking, even if the public has the most deplorable, to use Hillary Clinton's politically suicidal comments, you should be still open to it, should be able to hear it, especially when you're elected and you are drawing money from the public exchequer, right? So you cannot run a school board a way you can run, say, maybe a barbecue business, right? So as a result, I do think that this is an authoritarian move rather than a democratic move. School board members should be answering to the media directly, rather than kind of this weird corporate thing that you can only talk to my president through written emails. I don't think that is democratic, coming from a school board that is primarily democratic. So it's kind of laughable to me, in fact.
One of the problems, Anirban, though, is we're in a moment of extreme threats of violence against public elected officials, including local officials. I'm not saying that's the case here in Syracuse, but the Brennan Center for Justice did a survey of public officials around the country, found that 1 in 5 local office holders, we're talking about largely volunteer public servants who are just trying to help their community, 1 in 5 local public office holders is facing threats of violence from their community, right? So there's a fine line between accountability and then harassment, and also fear for your own, like, am I going to be safe in my house? I volunteered for this position in my community, and now people are threatening me.
Yeah, and I had to accompany board members in and out of meetings, particularly women who felt that they were dealing with hostility from community members who were male and did not feel comfortable coming and going from meetings. So that is real. I think, Anirban, one thing that's different about school boards is that individual school board members don't have a voice. That's how we were trained by the state association. Our voice is collective, and that's why most policies have a point person, particularly the president, who's elected by the board as the spokesperson for the board as a whole. So I think those dynamics are somewhat different than your run-of-the-mill elected official.
Michael, your thoughts on, there's a lot of money being spent by the school board. They've just hired some new people to do better communications, although I think it's really less than 1% of the budget. But what about this communication, public access?
Yeah, I think we sometimes leave the students out of the conversation right now. Let's take a quick peek at some of the numbers, right? The middle school absentee rate is right at 48%. The high school absentee rate is right at 58%. The math proficiency is 16%. The ELA test scores rate 644 out of 661 districts. The graduation rate last year was right at 70%, right? With those numbers, I think we need to take a hard look at 2 types of improvements. Soft improvements, those non-instructional investments that they're spending way too much money on, and hard improvements, classroom-focused investments. When you're looking at prioritizing things, you have to think about hard improvements. What are the hallmarks of hard improvements? 6 things: pedagogy, instruction, curriculum, special needs, student engagement, and parental involvement. So spending almost $750,000 on soft improvements, non-instructional, out-of-classroom investments, things like, as I read, increasing Facebook profiles, growing social media representation, hyping sports and cheerleading. If that doesn't increase these dismal numbers, if they think they've had a rough time, now they're going to have a much rough time next year. So I wish them well, but I'm just not clear on the priorities of Syracuse at this time.